The morning Cole Henderson landed in Nashville, he told himself he'd be gone in 2 years. That was 6 years ago. Now he sat at the back of a glass-walled conference room on Music Row, feet propped on the edge of the table, watching the city stretch out beneath a pale October sky. The buildings were close together here, brick and steel pressed shoulder to shoulder, like musicians crammed into a recording booth, and the air smelled faintly of rain that hadn't fallen yet. Cole liked that. He liked tension. He liked the feeling of something about to break. "You're not even listening," said Renata Cross from across the table. She was the head of A&R at Vantage Sound, mid-40s, with reading glasses perpetually pushed up onto her forehead like a second set of eyes. She had signed Cole straight out of Belmont University and had spent the better part of 6 years regretting it only occasionally. "I'm listening," Cole said, without moving. "Then what did I just say?" "You said the Henderson remix of Cassidy Blake's single moved 42,000 streams in the first 48 hours, and that the label is very pleased." He paused. "And then you said something about Texas." Renata took her glasses off her forehead and placed them on the table with deliberate care. "George Strait." Cole let his feet drop to the floor. "What about him?" "He's doing a special live event. One night only. San Antonio, AT&T Center, February 15th. The production team reached out to us, specifically to you, about handling the stage and audio concept." She slid a manila folder across the table. "It's a significant fee, Cole. And it's George Strait." Cole opened the folder and scanned the first page without picking it up. His eyes moved quickly. Budget figures, production specs, timeline. Then he pushed it back. "I don't do nostalgia projects." Renata stared at him. "I'm serious," he said, leaning forward now, elbows on the table. "I've spent 3 years building a sound that people actually respond to. Layered production, dynamic drops, texture. George Strait is 3 chords and a hat. No offense." "No offense," Renata repeated flatly. "I mean it with respect. He's a legend for his time. But what am I supposed to do with that? There's no canvas. There's no space for what I do." Renata was quiet for a long moment. Outside, a cloud moved across the sun and the room dimmed slightly, the way rooms do before serious things are said. "Cole," she said, "I need you to listen to me very carefully, because I'm going to say this once, and I'm going to say it as your friend, not your boss." She folded her hands on the table. "You are talented, genuinely. But you have spent 3 years producing music that sounds impressive for about 90 seconds, and then exhausts people. Your mixes are technically brilliant and emotionally empty. I haven't said anything because the numbers were there, but the numbers are flattening, and you know it." Cole said nothing. "George Strait's team didn't ask for you because they want lights and drops. They asked for you because someone on that team heard something in your early work, the acoustic sessions you did before you discovered synthesizers, and they believe you still have that in you." She picked up the folder and held it out. "Go to San Antonio. Listen. Learn something." Cole took the folder. He didn't say yes, but he took it, which, with Cole Henderson, was usually the same thing. Cole was 31 years old and had been in love with music since the age of 7, when his father had sat him down in the living room of their apartment in Knoxville, Tennessee, and played him a cassette tape of Hank Williams on a machine that required you to press both play and record simultaneously to get any sound at all. His father, Doug Henderson, had been a mechanic and an occasional bar musician, the kind of man who never recorded anything professionally but could make a room go quiet just by picking up a guitar. Doug died of a heart attack when Cole was 19, 2 months into his first semester at Belmont. Cole had responded to grief the way many young men respond to it. by working until there was no room left for anything else. He threw himself into the program, into production theory, into the mechanics of sound. He learned Pro Tools and Logic and every plugin that existed. He studied how sounds were layered, how frequencies interacted, how the human ear could be manipulated into feeling things it had no rational reason to feel. He became, over time, very good at manipulation. What he never examined, not honestly, not the way Renata was suggesting, was whether manipulation was the same as meaning. He drove home from Vantage Sound through light afternoon traffic, the folder on the passenger seat, Renata's words sitting in his chest like a stone he couldn't swallow or spit out. His apartment was on the east side of Nashville, a clean, modern two-bedroom he'd furnished with the specific impersonality of someone who traveled too much to bother with comfort. There were no photographs on the walls. There was expensive audio equipment on every surface and a couch he rarely sat on. He poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon, sat down at his workstation, and opened the folder. The production brief was detailed. George Strait's team wanted something they called elevated simplicity, a stage design and sound experience that honored the tradition of Strait's music while giving the AT&T Center the kind of presence a modern arena demanded. They weren't asking Cole to reinvent anything. They were asking him to serve the music. Cole read that phrase 3 times. Serve the music. He thought about his father pressing play and record at the same time. He thought about how the tape had hissed before the song started and how that hiss, that imperfect, unproduced, completely human hiss, had somehow made the music feel more real, not less. He picked up his phone and called Renata. "I'll do it," he said. "I know," she said, and hung up. He flew into San Antonio on a Tuesday in late January, 3 weeks before the show. The city met him with wide sky and dry warmth, a different kind of warmth than Nashville, which was soft and humid and green. San Antonio was open. The light had a directness to it, a confidence, as if the sun here had never learned to be subtle. Cole stepped out of San Antonio International Airport into that light and stood for a moment with his bag on his shoulder and his sunglasses still in his pocket. He took a breath. The air smelled like cedar and something faintly sweet he couldn't identify. A truck idled at the curb with a bumper sticker that read, "Real Country. No apologies." Cole put his sunglasses on and got into his rental car. The production offices were in a low brick building near the River Walk, a 15-minute drive from the AT&T Center. Cole arrived at 2 in the afternoon and found the parking lot half full, the lobby buzzing with the specific energy of a large event in its final assembly stages. There were road cases stacked along one wall, a whiteboard covered in scheduling notes, and 3 separate conversations happening simultaneously between people who were clearly used to managed chaos. A woman came out of a side office and walked directly toward him with the purposeful stride of someone who had no time for people who didn't know why they were there. "Cole Henderson," she said. It wasn't a question. "That's me, Diane Calloway." She shook his hand firmly. "Road manager. I've been with George's team for 19 years. You'll report to me on anything production-related, and I'll report to George's management. You have questions? You come to me first. You have ideas? Same. You have opinions about how things should be done differently than how we've always done them." She paused and looked at him steadily. "You come to me first. We clear?" "We're clear," Cole said. Diane Calloway was 52, with short silver hair and the weathered look of someone who had spent decades in venues, on buses, in the fluorescent-lit back corridors of arenas across America. She was wearing boots and a flannel shirt, and she carried a clipboard that she appeared to consult with the same frequency that other people checked their phones. "Good," she said. Let me show you the space. The AT&T Center was a different creature empty than it would be full. Cole had worked in enough arenas to know this. The way a venue breathed differently when it was just a building, before 18,000 people arrived to fill it with heat and noise and the particular electricity of collective anticipation. But the AT&T Center, standing at center stage and looking out at the empty seats, had something specific about it that Cole noticed immediately and couldn't quite name. It felt patient. 18,222 capacity, Diane said beside him. Sold out in 43 minutes. There are people driving from Amarillo, from El Paso, from Louisiana for this show. She let that sit for a moment. These aren't casual fans. These are people for whom this music means something specific and personal. Some of them have been listening to George Strait since before you were born. You understand what I'm telling you? You're telling me not to mess with it, Cole said. I'm telling you that what you build in here needs to deserve them. Cole stood there looking at the empty seats for a long moment. He thought about what elevated simplicity meant in a space this size. He thought about sound dispersion, about rigging points, about how light moved differently in San Antonio than it did in Nashville or Los Angeles. Mostly, though, he thought about deserving. It was not a word he used often. The first week was procedural. Meetings with the lighting director, a methodical man named Patrick Olson, who had worked country tours for 30 years and communicated primarily in technical specifications and rare, precise jokes. Discussions with the sound crew about speaker configuration and acoustic treatment. Walkthroughs of the stage with the set carpenter. A laconic Texan named Bobby Ray Duffin, who built everything from wood and seemed personally offended by the concept of LED facades. Cole observed more than he directed, which was unusual for him. On the fourth day, he met Lena Pruitt. She was in the rehearsal room at the end of the building's east corridor, a long, narrow room with a scuffed wood floor and acoustic panels on the walls, playing a passage on her fiddle that Cole heard before he saw her. He had been walking to a meeting, coffee in hand, and the sound stopped him in the corridor the way a hand on the shoulder stops you. It wasn't complicated music. It was a simple, melodic line, played slowly, with a vibrato so controlled it felt like breathing. Cole stood outside the half-open door and listened without going in, which was something he almost never did. He almost never stopped for music that wasn't his own work. But this made him stand still. He pushed the door open. She was seated on a metal folding chair in the middle of the room, fiddle tucked under her chin, eyes closed. She was in her late 20s, with dark hair pulled back, and the kind of focused stillness that serious musicians carry in their bodies. She didn't hear him come in, or if she did, she chose not to acknowledge it. Cole sat down on a chair near the door and waited. She finished the passage, lowered the bow, and opened her eyes. "Sorry," Cole said. "I wasn't trying to be weird. I stopped." She looked at him without particular alarm. "Cole Henderson," she said. "The producer." "Yeah? You're the fiddler?" "Violinist," she said, with the mildest possible emphasis. "Lena Pruitt. I've been with the touring band for 4 years. What was that passage you were playing?" She considered him for a moment, as if deciding whether the question was genuine. "It's from The Fireman, one of George's older ones. I'm working out a new arrangement for the intro sequence." She tilted her head slightly. "You know it?" "I know of it," Cole said honestly. "I don't know it the way you know it." Something shifted almost imperceptibly in her expression. Not warmth exactly, but a kind of recalibration, as if she'd expected a different answer and was adjusting her assessment accordingly. "Diane said you're the best production mind she's worked with in a decade," Lena said. "She also said you have a habit of hearing your own ideas louder than the music." Cole laughed despite himself. "Diane said that?" "Diane says what she means. "Yeah," Cole said. "I've noticed." He stood up, picking up his coffee. "I'll let you get back to it. Can I? Would it be all right if I came back and listened sometime? While you're working?" Lena picked up the bow again. "Door's not locked," she said. He went back the next morning and the morning after that. He didn't speak much during those sessions. He sat near the door with a notepad and listened to Lena work through arrangements, making notes that were less about production and more about structure, about how she built a phrase, how she decided where to add ornament and where to leave space. Space, he was realizing, was not the absence of something. Space was a decision. Space was confidence. On the third morning, she asked him what he was writing. "Trying to understand why less works," he said. Lena rested the fiddle on her knee. "Play me something you've produced," she said. "On your phone, whatever." He pulled up a track he'd finished 2 months earlier, a Cassidy Blake single that had done well commercially, full of layered synths and meticulous drops, a piece of production that he was genuinely proud of technically. Lena listened for 45 seconds, then gestured for him to stop. "It's impressive," she said. "But there's no room to feel anything. Every second is filled with something telling you how to feel. There's no moment where you're allowed to bring your own experience to it." She picked the fiddle back up. "Great country music. Great music, period. Leaves space for the listener. The listener fills the space with their own life, their own memory, their own heartbreak. That's the transaction. You're not giving them space. You're giving them instructions." Cole stared at her. "That's the most articulate critique of my work anyone has ever given me," he said. "I'm a musician," Lena said. "We think about these things." She brought the bow up. "Now be quiet. I'm working." By the end of the first week, Cole had scrapped 40% of his original production concept. He did this quietly, alone, at 11 o'clock on a Friday night in the production office with the door closed and a cup of cold coffee beside his laptop. The design he'd brought from Nashville was exactly what Renata had warned against. Technically spectacular, emotionally managed. There were light cues that would have overwhelmed the stage at climactic moments, an audio layering system that would have added digital texture to the live band's sound, a video backdrop sequence that Cole had thought of as cinematic, and that he now recognized, in the language Lena had given him, as simply loud. He pulled it apart element by element. He wasn't starting over. The structural bones were sound. The speaker configuration was right. The rigging plan was solid. But the philosophy underneath it had to change. He needed to think about what the music required, not what the space allowed. He was still at his laptop at 1 in the morning when he heard the door at the end of the hallway open. Footsteps, unhurried. Then a knock at his open door. He turned. George Strait stood in the doorway. Cole had seen photographs, of course, thousands of them. And he had watched performance footage as part of his preparation research. But photographs and footage did not prepare you for the simple physical fact of the man. George Strait was 60-something, lean, dressed plainly in jeans and a collared shirt, with the kind of face that had been weathered by genuine experience rather than performance of it. He held a cup of coffee in one hand and a worn leather notebook in the other. He looked at the screen behind Cole, at the design documents and the audio waveforms and the scattered notes. "Late night," he said. "Yes, sir," Cole said, without thinking about the "sir." George Strait nodded toward the empty chair across the desk. "Mind if I sit for a minute?" Cole stood up reflexively, then felt foolish about it and sat back down. "Please." George sat down and set his coffee on the edge of the desk. He didn't look at the screen again. He looked at Cole with the straightforward attention of someone who was genuinely interested in what was in front of him, which was, Cole would realize later, one of the most quietly powerful things about him. "Diane tells me you've been reworking the concept," George said. "Yes, sir. The original plan was, it was mine. It was what I know how to do. But it wasn't right for this." George was quiet for a moment. "What made you realize that?" Cole thought about Lena in the rehearsal room. He thought about the passage from The Fireman. "Someone described my work as giving the audience instructions instead of space," he said. It was accurate. George smiled, a small, genuine smile, the kind that lived mostly at the corners of the eyes. "That's a good way to put it." He opened the leather notebook on his knee, not reading from it, just resting his hand on it. "You know what I've always believed about a live show?" "Tell me." "The production should be like a good frame on a painting. It holds the picture. It shows the picture to its best advantage. But nobody walks into a gallery and talks about the frame." He picked up his coffee. "The song is the painting. Everything else is the frame." Cole looked at the screen for a moment, then back at the man across the desk. "That's essentially what I'm trying to rebuild," he said. "But I spent 6 years learning to make frames." "And now you're learning something harder," George said. He stood up, picked up his notebook. "Get some sleep, son. The work's better when you're rested." He moved toward the door, then paused. "What you said earlier, about the original concept being yours, that was honest. I respect honest." He nodded once. "Good night." Cole sat in the quiet office for a long time after that. He thought about frames and paintings. He thought about his father pressing play and record simultaneously. He thought about the hiss before the music. Then he opened a new document and started over. The second week brought complications. On Monday morning, Cole presented his revised concept to Diane, Patrick Olson, and the venue's technical director, a no-nonsense woman named Karen Whitfield, who had overseen production at the AT&T Center for 11 years. The presentation went well. Diane's expression shifted over the course of 40 minutes from guarded skepticism to something that Cole cautiously identified as approval. Patrick asked precise, useful questions. Karen had notes on technical implementation that were directly on point. Then the phone rang. It was Derek Vaughn, the vice president of marketing at the festival's primary corporate sponsor, calling from Dallas. He was 38 and spoke with the particular confidence of someone whose opinions had rarely been seriously challenged. And he had a very clear vision of what the show should look like. "It needs to be bigger," Derek said. Cole had him on speaker in the production office, with Diane sitting across the table. "I've seen the revised concept. It's tasteful. I get what you're going for. But we have a sponsorship activation here, and our brand needs presence. The stage needs more visual impact. More lights, more movement. The screens should be running content during every song, not just between sets." Cole kept his voice level. "With respect, Mr. Vaughn, running content during songs is going to pull focus from the performance. This isn't a pop production. George Strait's audience—" "I know who George Strait's audience is," Derek said, "and they want spectacle. Everyone wants spectacle. You think people in 2026 are going to be satisfied watching a man stand at a microphone with a band behind him?" "I think," Cole said, "that's exactly what 18,000 people paid for." There was a pause on the line. "I'm going to call management," Derek said. "I want a meeting by Thursday." He hung up. Diane looked at Cole across the table. "Welcome to the industry," she said. The meeting happened Thursday, in a conference room at the AT&T Center. Derek Vaughn arrived with 2 colleagues and a slideshow. George's management, represented by his longtime manager, Bill Holloway, a compact, silver-haired man from San Antonio who spoke slowly and listened faster, sat across from them. Cole was there in his capacity as production designer. He had brought Patrick Olson and a single printed page with the core production philosophy outlined in 8 bullet points. Derek's slideshow was thorough and aggressive. It included examples of stadium productions with heavy LED content, graphics packages, pyrotechnics. It included survey data suggesting that younger demographic attendees at country events expected high visual production values. It included a proposed sponsor logo placement schedule that would put branding on the main screens for a combined 47 minutes of a 90-minute show. Cole listened to all of it without interrupting. When Derek finished, Bill Holloway looked at his hands for a moment and then said, "What does George want?" There was a brief silence. "George's vision," Bill said, "is a show that lets the music speak. He's been very clear about that. He's not doing this for spectacle. He's doing this because these songs matter to him and to the people in those seats." He looked at Derek Vaughn without hostility, just with the settled certainty of a man who had been having versions of this conversation for 30 years. Branding has its place. Activation has its place. But this production serves the music first. That's not negotiable. Derek leaned forward. "Bill, with the investment our company is making, is appreciated," Bill said, "and will be honored appropriately. Cole, walk us through the revised concept." Cole stood up and walked to the front of the room. He didn't have a slideshow. He had his one printed page and his voice. And he had, over the past 2 weeks, developed something he'd been missing for years: actual conviction about what he was doing. He talked for 20 minutes about restraint as a production philosophy, about how the absence of visual noise would make the moments of visual emphasis, and there were planned moments, land with greater force, about how the sound design was built around the live band's natural acoustic character, enhanced rather than replaced, about how the goal was not to make 18,000 people feel they were watching a spectacle, but to make each of those 18,000 people feel, at some point in the evening, that they were alone with a song they loved. When he finished, the room was quiet. Derek Vaughn looked at his slideshow and then looked at Cole. Something had shifted in his posture. Not capitulation exactly, but the recognition that he was in the presence of a different kind of argument than the one he'd prepared for. 47 minutes of logo placement becomes 12, Bill Holloway said, between sets, stage transitions, and pre-show. The production concept stays as presented. He looked at Derek. "Do we have an agreement?" Derek looked at his colleagues. He looked at the table. He nodded. "We have an agreement." After the room emptied, Diane walked up beside Cole and looked at the empty conference table. "Good room," she said. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. You did that yourself." She picked up her clipboard. "There's a band rehearsal at 4. You should be there." Cole had been to band rehearsals before. Hundreds of them. As a producer, as an observer, as the person responsible for translating live sound into recorded or broadcast audio. But he had never been to a rehearsal quite like this one. George Strait's touring band had been together in various configurations for decades. Some of the musicians had been playing with George for 20 years or more. They moved through the music with the ease of people who have internalized something so completely that they no longer think about it. They simply play, and the playing is right. Cole sat in the corner of the rehearsal space with his notepad and watched. What struck him most was the economy of it. There was no excess motion, no demonstrative musicianship, no moment when any musician appeared to be playing for their own satisfaction rather than the songs. The drummer, a quiet, methodical man named Frank Estes, kept time with a precision that felt almost invisible, present and perfect, and entirely unobtrusive. The lead guitarist, a lanky veteran named Jimmy Lawford, played lines so tasteful and sparse that Cole found himself instinctively waiting for more, and then realizing, each time, that nothing more was needed. And then George began to sing. Cole had heard the recordings. He thought he understood what George Strait was. He was not prepared for what happened in that rehearsal room when the voice came in. Not the polished, mastered, radio-ready voice of a record, but the living voice of a man in a room singing a song he had sung 10,000 times and still meant. There was a quality to it that Cole did not have an immediate technical vocabulary for. It was not the most powerful voice he had ever heard in person. It was not the most technically impressive. What it was, and Cole sat with this for a long time before he found the word, was true. It was simply, completely, irreducibly true. He wrote in his notepad, "The frame serves the painting. The painting is true." That evening, he found Lena in the rehearsal room again, working through a counter-melody for "Carrying Your Love with Me." "I watched the full rehearsal today," he said. "I know," she said. "I saw you in the corner. I've been in this business for 6 years, and I think I heard live music today for the first time." Lena lowered the fiddle and looked at him. "That's a big thing to say." "I know." She was quiet for a moment, turning the bow over in her hands. "My mother used to say that the difference between hearing music and listening to music is what you bring to it. If you come with an agenda, even a good agenda, even technical expertise, you hear the surfaces. If you come empty, you listen to what's underneath." "I've never come empty to anything in my life," Cole said. "I know," she said again. But this time, there was no edge in it. It's not too late to learn. There was something in that sentence, something in the way she said it, looking at him with a directness that was neither warm nor cold, but simply honest, that Cole felt in a part of himself that his production equipment could not reach. He didn't say anything. He sat down near the door, and she went back to work. And the music in that small room with the scuffed wood floor was the quietest and most present thing Cole Henderson had heard in years. 10 days before the show, Cole's past arrived in San Antonio. His name was Jordan Finch, 29, sharp, with the specific groomed energy of someone who had studied how successful people looked and replicated it precisely. Jordan had been Cole's assistant at Vantage Sound for 2 years before striking out on his own, producing a string of aggressively commercial country pop records that had done extremely well and that Cole had, in private, criticized extensively. Jordan was in San Antonio because Derek Vaughn had hired him as a creative consultant to advise on what he called the audience engagement dimension of the production. A development Cole learned about on a Tuesday morning when Jordan walked into the production office, hand extended, with the relaxed confidence of someone who expected to be welcomed. "Cole," Jordan said. "Good to see you, man. This is going to be great." Cole shook his hand. "What exactly is your role here, Jordan?" "Creative consultation. Visual experience. Derek wants to make sure the audience gets something they'll share on social." Jordan looked around the office at the design documents pinned to the boards. "These are good. Really clean. But I think we can add some energy. Some moments that really pop." Cole looked at him for a long moment. "Jordan," he said carefully, "the production concept is set and approved. By management, by George's team, and by the venue. There's no dimension that isn't accounted for." Jordan smiled with the ease of someone who had found that smiling made conflict harder to sustain. "Look, I'm not here to step on what you've built. I'm just here to punch it up a little, add some moments." "What kind of moments?" "Confetti drop for the finale. Maybe a drone sequence for the opener. Something for people to film." He pulled out his phone and showed Cole a mock-up. "Just a few things. Low footprint, high impact." Cole stared at the mock-up. A confetti drop, a drone sequence. He thought about what George had said. The frame should not compete with the painting. He thought about the rehearsal room and Frank Estes keeping invisible time, and Jimmy Lawford playing lines that needed nothing added to them. He thought about 18,000 people who had driven from El Paso and Amarillo and Louisiana because these songs meant something specific to their lives. "No," Cole said. Jordan's smile didn't waver. "I get it. I respect the artistic vision. But Derek agreed to a production concept in a meeting 3 days ago. That concept doesn't include drones or confetti." Cole picked up his phone. "I'm going to call Bill Holloway right now and confirm that agreement. And then I'm going to ask that any further creative consultation goes through his office before it comes anywhere near this production." He looked at Jordan steadily. "I'm not saying this personally. I'm saying it because this show deserves better than being turned into content." Jordan's smile finally shifted. Not quite gone, but reconfigured. There was something underneath it that Cole recognized because he had worn the same expression himself, years ago. The faintly defensive look of someone whose relationship to music has become primarily transactional. "You've changed," Jordan said. "Yeah," Cole said. "I have." He made the call. The confrontation with Jordan unsettled Cole more than he showed. Not because of Jordan himself. Jordan was a manageable problem. And Bill Holloway's office handled it cleanly and quickly, limiting Jordan's role to pre-show social media content. A genuinely appropriate function. What unsettled Cole was the recognition in Jordan's work of what his own work had been, and might have continued to be indefinitely, if Renata hadn't pushed him onto a plane to San Antonio. He thought about the Cassidy Blake single. He thought about 3 years of technically brilliant, emotionally managed production. He thought about all the songs he had dressed up in expensive clothes until you couldn't see the song anymore. He was sitting with these thoughts on the river walk one evening, 6 days before the show, watching the water and the light on it, when Lena appeared with 2 cups of coffee and sat down beside him without asking if he wanted company. He didn't say anything. She handed him the coffee. "How are you doing?" she asked. Not the polite version of the question, the real one. "I've been thinking about the work I did before this," he said. "Whether any of it was actually good. Some of it was. You've heard it? I researched you when Diane told me who was coming." She looked at the water. "There's a session recording you did about 4 years ago. An acoustic set with a writer named Paul Dietrich. It's not on any major platform. It's just floating around in corners of the internet. Have you heard it recently?" "Not in years." "It's good, Cole. It's genuinely good. You hadn't learned to distrust silence yet." She turned to look at him. "Somewhere between that session and now, you got scared of what would happen if you left space. So you filled it." "Scared of what?" "That the song wouldn't be enough. That the emotion wouldn't land without help." She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. "But here's the thing. When you add all that machinery to compensate for your own uncertainty, you communicate the uncertainty. The listener feels it, even if they can't name it. The music feels defended." Cole thought about that word, defended. "The best production I've ever heard is the kind where you don't know it's there," Lena continued. "Where it's just a song and 2 people and something true between them. And the production is holding all of that so lightly that it doesn't disturb the air." Somewhere on the river, a boat went past, and its wake rocked the reflections of the lights. "You said something a few days ago," Cole said, "that it's not too late to learn." "I meant it." "I know you did." He looked at her. "I've been thinking about what comes after San Antonio, about what I go back to Nashville and do differently." "That's a good thing to be thinking about," Lena said. She stood up, picking up her coffee. "But first, finish this show. Do it right. Let that be the thing that teaches you." She walked back toward the building, and Cole sat with the river and the light a little longer. 4 days before the show, Cole made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He called Patrick Olson into the production office and told him he wanted to eliminate the automated light sequencing entirely for 3 songs in the middle of the set: The Chair, Oceanfront Property, and Famous Last Words of a Fool, and run those numbers on a single follow spot, manually operated, with no programmed cues. Patrick looked at him over his glasses. "You want to go manual on 3 songs in an 18,000-seat arena?" "Yes. That's not how arena production works." "I know." Patrick was quiet for a moment. He was a methodical man who valued precision, and manual operation introduced a variable that precision could not entirely control. But he was also, underneath the methodical exterior, a man who had loved live music for 30 years, and something in what Cole was proposing reached that part of him. "Who operates the spot?" he asked. "You," Cole said. "You know this music better than anyone on the crew." Patrick looked out the window for a moment. Then he nodded once, with the gravity of someone accepting a responsibility rather than agreeing to a plan. "All right," he said. "But we rehearse it until it's right. Every night until the show," Cole said. "Whatever it takes." The decision to go manual on those 3 songs was, in retrospect, the hinge point of the entire production. The moment where Cole's revised philosophy stopped being an intellectual position and became a physical, practical, irreversible commitment. Because manual meant human. Manual meant that what happened on that stage on February 15th would not be perfectly reproducible, would not be flawlessly sequenced, would be exactly what it was: a man at a microphone, a band, a song, and another man holding a light. Cole worked 18-hour days in the final week. He was in the venue every morning by 7 and rarely left before 1 in the morning. He walked the space obsessively, listening to the way sound moved through it, adjusting speaker angles by fractions. He sat in different seats, the front rows, the upper deck, the corners, and listened to how the room changed from each position. He wanted every person in the building to feel that the show was speaking directly to them. Diane watched all of this with her characteristic economy of expression. She didn't praise Cole, that wasn't her way, but she stopped qualifying her assessments of his work. Where she had initially said things like, "That could work," or "We'll see," she now simply nodded and moved on to the next item on her clipboard, which Cole gradually understood was Diane Calloway's version of genuine approval. On the Thursday evening before the Saturday show, she came into the production office and sat down across from Cole, which was unusual. She generally conducted business standing. "You want to know something about working with George for 19 years?" she said. "Yes," Cole said. "He never asks for more than the song needs. In 19 years, I have never once heard him say, 'Make it bigger,' or 'add more.' Every note he sings, every arrangement decision, every set list, it's all in service of what the song actually is." She set her clipboard on the desk. People in this industry treat restraint like it's a limitation, like it means settling for less. George treats it like it's the whole point. She looked at Cole directly. "What you've built in here, the version you rebuilt, not the first one, understands that. I wanted you to know that." Cole nodded. He didn't trust himself to say much more than that. "Get some sleep," Diane said, picking up her clipboard. 2 days. That night, Cole called his mother in Knoxville. She answered on the second ring, the way she always did, as if she had been expecting him. "How's Texas?" she asked. "It's good, Mom. It's really good." "You sound different." "Different how?" She paused, and he could hear the familiar sounds of the Knoxville house behind her. The television, low in the background. The particular creak of her chair. "You sound like you when you were 19, she said. "Before everything happened. You sound like you when you still had something to prove to yourself instead of everybody else." Cole pressed his fingers against his eyes. "I've been thinking about Dad," he said. "Tell me, that cassette tape, Hank Williams, do you still have the player?" A pause. "It's in the closet in the back room. I kept it." "Good," Cole said. "Don't get rid of it." They talked for a while about nothing important. His sister's kids, a neighbor's renovation, the weather in Knoxville, easy things, familial things, the conversation of people who love each other and don't always have the right words for it and don't need them. When he hung up, Cole sat for a long time in the quiet of the hotel room. He thought about his father in the living room, pressing play and record. He thought about the hiss before the music. He thought about what Lena had said about the transaction between a song and a listener, the space the song leaves, and what the listener brings to fill it. He thought about what he was going to fill it with. The day before the show, the AT&T Center came alive. Load-in had been completed the previous day, the stage built, the rigging set, the speakers in position. But Saturday morning brought the full crew in for a final technical walkthrough, and the venue, which had been patient in its emptiness, seemed to feel the proximity of its purpose. The lights were on. The sound system was hot. The stage stood there in the middle of the arena floor, clean and spare. A platform of Texas live oak and steel dressed in a design that said, simply and without apology, "This is where the music is." Cole stood at the production desk, a console at the center of the floor, with sightlines to the full stage and sightlines to the main speakers, and ran through the cue sheet with Patrick Olson for the last time. Every light state, every transition, every moment of deliberate darkness. The 3 manual numbers were marked in red. "How are you feeling about it?" Cole asked. Patrick adjusted his glasses. "I've been operating lighting for 30 years, he said. "I've run manual spots in clubs and theaters and festival stages." He looked at the follow spot position high on the rear truss. "Never in an arena on a show this size." He paused. "I'm nervous." "Good," Cole said. "Nervous is right. Nervous means you understand what it matters." Patrick looked at him with the faint surprise of someone receiving wisdom from an unexpected source. He nodded. "Nervous is right," he agreed. George Strait arrived at the venue at 2 in the afternoon for a full sound check and final band rehearsal. Cole watched from the production desk as the band assembled on stage. Frank Estes taking his position at the drums with the deliberate calm of a man sitting down to read. Jimmy Lawford plugging in with the economy of someone for whom the act of picking up a guitar was as natural as standing. Lena moving to her position at stage right with the fiddle already under her arm, as if she'd been standing there all along. George walked out last, in jeans and a simple plaid shirt. And the crew, dozens of people moving through the arena with cable and clipboards and cases, paused almost involuntarily, the way people pause when something they've been waiting for arrives. He went to the microphone and said, without preamble, "Let's run," carried away from the top. The band started playing. Cole closed his eyes and listened. He had heard these songs in rehearsal, in recording, from a chair in a corner of a practice room. He had not heard them in an arena with a properly tuned full-scale sound system. And the difference was the difference between a photograph of a landscape and standing in it. The sound filled the space with a completeness that Cole felt physically. The low-end warmth of the bass guitar in his chest, the fiddle bright and present above it, and George's voice running through the middle of all of it like a river through country it knew by heart. Cole opened his eyes. He made 3 small adjustments to the monitor mix. 1 minor tweak to the reverb tail on the lead vocal. He noted a slight timing drift in the main delay return on the far side speakers and asked Karen Whitfield to compensate. 97% of his production concept he did not touch. Because it was right. It had been built over 3 weeks of honest work to serve this. and it served it. After the sound check, George came down from the stage and walked to the production desk. Cole stood up. "How's it sound?" George asked. "Like it should," Cole said. George looked out at the empty arena. The seats, the lights, the stage his team had built. "Tomorrow night, there'll be 18,000 people in those seats," he said. "A lot of them will have a memory attached to one of these songs. A specific memory. A place, a face. Something that happened." He was quiet for a moment. "That's what we're there for. That's the whole point of doing this." He looked at Cole. "You understand that now?" It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir," Cole said. "I understand it." The afternoon of the show, Cole didn't go back to the hotel. He stayed in the arena, moving through the space, sitting in different sections of the empty seating bowl, listening to the building's natural acoustics settled in the absence of sound. This was something he had never done before a show. He had always been in motion, checking and rechecking systems, managing variables, staying busy in the way that people stay busy when stillness makes them nervous. He was not nervous today. Or rather, he was nervous, the way Patrick had described. The right kind of nervous. The kind that comes from understanding what something matters. Lena found him in the upper deck at around 4 o'clock, both of them sitting in the farthest seats from the stage, looking down at the arena floor. "How are you?" she asked. "Ready," Cole said. "I think." "You are?" She looked down at the stage. "What you've built down there is honest. You can hear it in the sound check. It doesn't get in the way of anything." He looked at her. They had spent 3 weeks in the same building, talking about music and space and truth, and he had understood, gradually, that what he felt in her presence was not the comfortable absence of challenge, but something harder and more valuable. The feeling of being seen accurately, without flattery or cruelty, by someone whose judgment he had come to genuinely respect. "I'd like to stay in touch," he said. "After this, if that's—" "Yes," she said, before he finished the sentence. Not warmly exactly, but with the directness that was simply how she was. Direct, clear, unadorned, like the best music. He nodded. They sat in the upper deck as the building began to fill with crew, with early arrivals, with the first sounds of the evening, and the arena around them started its slow transformation from empty space into something alive. At 6:45, Cole put on his headset and took his position at the production desk. At 6:50, Diane appeared at his shoulder. "Last check," she said. "Everything's green." She looked at the stage, at the lights in their pre-show state, at the empty microphone stand at center stage. 19 years, she said quietly. "It's different every time." Cole looked at her. "Not the production," she clarified. "The moment right before. The room right before the music." She looked at him. "You feel it?" Cole felt it. The room was filling now. He could hear the crowd noise building, a rising hum of thousands of voices, the sound of a crowd that had driven from Amarillo and El Paso and Louisiana, a crowd that had specific memories attached to these songs and had come here tonight to inhabit those memories for a few hours in the company of 18,000 strangers. "I feel it," he said. Diane nodded. She picked up her own headset and put it on. "Showtime in 12, she said, and walked away. Cole sat at the production desk and breathed. He thought, "I spent 6 years learning to fill the space. Tonight, I learned what the space is for." The show began at 7:59 with a single guitar note. Not a light cue, not a video countdown, not a DJ drop or a pyrotechnic flourish. One guitar note, in the dark, filling the AT&T Center. Jimmy Lawford, at stage right, playing a single clean note on his Telecaster that rang out across 18,000 people who had gone in the last seconds of darkness, completely silent. Then the lights came up. Not explosively, not with the programmed precision of a stadium event, but gradually, organically, the way dawn comes to the Texas hill country. And George Strait walked to the microphone. The crowd noise that erupted at that moment was the kind of sound that production equipment cannot manufacture and money cannot buy. It was the sound of recognition, of something loved and longed for arriving, finally, in the room. It was the sound of 18,000 individual relationships between a voice and a life, all happening simultaneously. Cole sat at the production desk with his hands resting on the console, not touching it, just watching. The frame holds the painting. The painting is true. George opened with Ace in the hole, and the band was perfect in the way that only musicians who have played together for decades can be. Not the mechanical perfection of programming, but the organic perfection of deep mutual understanding. People who knew each other's musical instincts so well that they could leave space for each other without negotiating it. The way old friends finish each other's sentences without trying. Cole made 2 small adjustments in the first song. The slightest compression on the kick drum to keep it from muddying in the low end. A tiny EQ curve on the room mics to catch the ambience of the crowd noise without overloading the mix. Then he let it go. He had built the frame. Now it was time for the painting. The set moved through its first hour with the kind of momentum that has nothing to do with tempo and everything to do with truth. Check yes or no brought the crowd to its feet in the first chorus. Troubadour arrived like a quiet conversational truth in the middle of the set. And the quieter the song, the more completely the arena went still. 18,000 people choosing, instinctively, to give the music the space it needed. Cole watched that happen. He watched a crowd the size of a small town go silent together. Not because they were told to, not because the production created the conditions for it, but because the song asked for it, and they knew. This, he understood, was what Renata had meant. This was what Lena had been describing in the rehearsal room. This was what George had been doing for decades. Not giving the audience instructions, giving them space, trusting them to bring their own lives to it. He thought about his father. He thought about the hiss before the music. He thought about every song his father had ever played in the living room of that apartment in Knoxville. Simple songs on a beat-up guitar. No production, no frame, just the voice and the instrument and the truth. Doug Henderson had known something that his son had spent 6 years forgetting and 3 weeks remembering. The 3 manual songs came in the second half of the set. The chair first. Patrick Olson took the follow spot. The automated lights dropped to a gentle ambient wash. Warm, almost amber, the color of late afternoon in the Texas hill country. And Patrick, from his position on the rear truss, brought up the single spot on George Strait's face as the song began. Cole watched from the desk. He had watched Patrick rehearse this moment 15 times in the preceding days. But the rehearsals had been in an empty arena, and there was a difference, a profound and entirely unpredictable difference, between doing something in an empty room and doing it in a room full of living, breathing people who were feeling things. Patrick held the spot steady. He moved it with George the way a conversation moves. Following, responsive, never anticipating, but never late. Not mechanical, not programmed. Human. When George turned slightly toward the band, the light went with him. When he stepped forward, the light followed. When, at the bridge, George closed his eyes and held a note that the audience received with an involuntary collective intake of breath, Patrick held the spot exactly still. Cole had his hand near the console. He did not touch it. Oceanfront property came next. And then, famous last words of a fool. And across those 3 songs, the arena performed its finest act of the evening. It disappeared. The production disappeared. The lighting disappeared. The 18,000 people in the seats disappeared, in the sense that they ceased to be an audience and became, instead, simply a presence. The warm, attending presence of people who were somewhere private and important and were grateful to be there. Cole sat at the desk with tears on his face that he didn't bother wiping. Not because the songs were new to him. They weren't. Not anymore. But because in those 3 songs, with the single follow spot and the live band and the voice that was simply, irreducibly, completely true, Cole Henderson heard something he had not heard in years. He heard his father. Not literally, not supernaturally. He heard the quality of his father. The quality of a man who had picked up a guitar in a living room in Knoxville, Tennessee, because the music was true and the truth was worth saying, regardless of the production value, regardless of the frame, regardless of anything except the song and the feeling in it. He heard it in George Strait's voice the same way he had heard it in the hiss before the cassette tape music. The same way he had heard it in Lena's fiddle on that first morning in the rehearsal room. Some things were just true. The encore was Carrying Your Love With Me. George came back to the stage alone for 8 bars, just voice and guitar, before the band joined in. The crowd, which had been on its feet, went still again, choosing stillness as they had all evening, in the presence of something that didn't need them to be loud. Lena's violin came in on the second verse, the new arrangement she had been working on in the rehearsal room, the counter melody she'd built over 3 weeks, something that lived beneath the vocal line like a second conversation, present and listening and responsive. Cole watched her play from the production desk. She stood at stage right with her eyes open, watching George, watching the band, part of something larger than herself, with the whole-bodied ease of someone who understood, completely, that their purpose was to serve the music. The song built to its final chorus, and the crowd came back to life. Not as noise, not as spectacle, but as the sound of 18,000 people who had been given their own specific piece of this evening and were grateful for it. The sound they made was the sound of gratitude and recognition and memory. It lasted a long time. It lasted longer than most encores. It lasted until George Strait raised a hand from the stage, a simple, genuine gesture, and the arena lights came up. Cole sat at the desk. Around him, crew members were already moving. The beginning of loadout, the practical machinery of an industry that never fully stops moving. Patrick Olson came down from the lighting position and walked to the desk without saying anything, just stood beside Cole for a moment, both of them looking at the stage. "The manual spots," Cole said. "How did it feel?" Patrick considered this carefully, the way he considered everything. "It felt," he said, "like I was holding something that mattered." Cole nodded. Diane appeared at his other shoulder. She looked at the stage, at the crew beginning their work, at the arena emptying in its long, slow tide of people. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "You did good, son." From Diane Calloway, with 19 years behind her, that was everything. After the loadout had begun, and the house lights were fully up and the river of concert-goers had thinned to a trickle, Cole found Lena near the stage, fiddle case in hand, watching the crew work. He stood beside her. "How was it from up there?" he asked. "Like the best nights always are," she said. "Like the music was the only thing in the room." She looked at him. "How was it from the desk?" "Like something I needed to learn," Cole said. "And like, I'm glad I learned it here." She looked at the stage for a moment longer. The crew moved around them. Road cases rolling, cables coiling, the systematic dismantling of something that had, for 2 hours, been alive. "What happens when you go back to Nashville?" she asked. "I'm going to call Paul Dietrich," Cole said, "the singer-songwriter. We did an acoustic session 4 years ago that was apparently, according to someone I trust, the best work I've ever done." He paused. "I want to go back to that. I want to start from something true and build from there, instead of starting from the production and hoping the truth finds its way in." Lena nodded. "That's the right order." "Yeah." He looked at her. "San Antonio's not that far from Nashville." "No," she said. "It's not." She picked up her fiddle case, and something passed between them that was not a declaration and not a promise, but was, like the best music, an honest thing. A space left open, an invitation to bring your own life to it and see what happened. Cole flew back to Nashville on a Sunday morning. He sat by the window and watched Texas give way to Arkansas and then to Tennessee. The landscape shifting from open sky and cedar to the softer, greener, closer world he'd lived in for 6 years. Nashville came up beneath him in the mid-morning light, its buildings familiar and different at the same time. He had a voicemail from Renata. "I heard it went well. I heard it went better than well. I also heard you made Derek Vaughan back down from a confetti drop, which is its own kind of legendary. Call me Monday." He smiled and put his phone away. He thought about what he was going back to. Not the same city he'd left, because he was not the same person who had left it. Same apartment, same equipment, same industry, but a different relationship to all of it. A different understanding of what the work was for. He thought about George Strait walking to a microphone in a dark arena while 18,000 people held their breath. He thought about a single guitar note filling a space. No preamble, no build-up, no instruction, just the note and the silence before it, and the 18,000 people it landed in. He thought about his father pressing play and record simultaneously. He thought about the hiss. He thought about how some things were just true, and how the job, the real job, the one that mattered, was not to dress the truth up or amplify it or instruct people in how to feel about it, but to find it and clear the space around it and let it speak. The plane touched down in Nashville at 11:43 on a Sunday morning in February. Cole Henderson picked up his bag, walked through the terminal, and went out into the pale Tennessee light. He had work to do. 3 weeks later, Cole called Paul Dietrich and booked 2 weeks of acoustic sessions at a small studio in East Nashville. The resulting EP, 6 songs, minimal production, 1 microphone between them, was released 8 months later on a small independent label. It received no radio play. It was streamed 400,000 times in its first month, almost entirely through word of mouth, and every single review used some version of the same phrase: honest, true, the kind of music that leaves room for you. Lena Pruitt drove up from San Antonio on a Thursday in April. She stayed for the weekend. Then she stayed a little longer. Cole kept the production concept documents from the AT&T Center show in a folder on his desktop, not as a portfolio piece. He never showed it to clients. He kept it as a reminder. Written at the top of the first page, in his own handwriting, "The frame holds the painting. The painting is true." Diane Calloway, asked by a trade publication about the San Antonio show, said only, "It sounded like the music." She was quoted extensively. George Strait, for his part, said what he had always said about the best shows of his career. "The songs did the work. I just showed up." He always did.